It is my great pleasure to bring to you today Deborah Ann Davis. Deborah Ann Davis is an award-winning author, speaker, and coach with over 3 decades of experience in middle school and high school education. As a teacher, Deborah has helped countless families replace the pain typical of the tween-teen years with fostering positive and healthy relationships despite adolescent angst. She's founder of the Awesome Mom Tribe and mother herself, and she now applies her experience in education to coaching parenting skills. Armed with her sense of humor, a BS in education from University of Massachusetts, and a master's in education and supervision from Emory University, she provides guidance and encouragement for moms to help them foster positive and healthy relationships within their family. Her previous titles include How to Get Your Happy On and the Love of Fairs series. And you can learn more about her at www.deborah.ann, no E and Ann, deborahanndavis.com. And Deborah, what's the name of your mom book? Slam the Door.
How to Keep Your Daughter from Slamming the Door.
How to Keep Your Daughter from Slamming the Door. And let me give a quick testimonial to this book. I have read it. It is not only delightful, and Deborah does have a great sense of humor. The advice is so spot on and so concrete and doable. Go get her book. If you are the mom of a daughter, go get her book. I promise you, you're going to love it. All right, take it away.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. I'm usually, when I do these presentations, I'm all gathered and collected, but when you started complimenting the book, I started to blush and I went, woo! So thank you. Okay, so I'm doing learning styles today, and I have a PowerPoint, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and hopefully this is going to work. So is this good? Ladies, can you give me a heads up, say yes or no? Hello.
Yep, we got you. Go ahead.
I'm the only one here. Okay. So I'm talking about learning styles during the quarantine specifically because I'd say that the majority of the moms did not sign up for having their kids sitting around the house learning instead of going to school. So I want to help you minimize some of the conflicts that occur with you trying to help them with their education. Okay, hang on one second. All right, there we go. So first of all, let's talk about learning styles. What's the big deal about them? If we all had the same learning style, then there would be no problem because we would all take in information and process information the exact same way, and there wouldn't be any surprises. But we don't all learn the same way. So what happens is you'll have an adult who has a different style or process than the child, and they're both expecting the other person to interact in a particular way. And they don't get that interaction because they see the world differently. And that causes a lot of clashes. So if you've got a teacher as a different learning style, or AKA their teaching style, then the way your child learns, your child may be, floundering around when the information is something that they can handle just fine. It's just not receiving it in a way that they can optimize. And this is why it's so important, because every child who is faced with a dilemma walks away thinking, I'm not as smart as the other people. I can't accomplish what they can do. They're better than me. But the important message here is that there's nothing wrong with being different. It's only different. It's not good or bad. It's just different. So what you do is you take your style and you emphasize the things that are really good about your strengths, and then you shore up the things where you're not as good and not as strong in those areas. The thing is that this is not an excuse to say, well, I'm a visual learner, so I'm not going to worry about the other things. This is a way you identify what's actually going on with you so that you can optimize it. Now, I'm going to use 3 styles: the auditory style, the visual style, and the kinesthetic style. And most likely as an adult, you have an inkling about how you process in information the best? What is your go-to preference when you're trying to learn about things? Because the way we process information impacts our relationships, the way we interact with people, the way we learn, and the way we understand our environment. So if we think that everybody does it the same way that we do, then we're not going to understand the people around us. The interesting thing is that nobody is a singular thing. Some people are stronger in one area than another, but there's a lot of overlap. I am a visual learner, majority, but I'm kind of a visual kinesthetic learner. And when, as a science teacher, I was really happy in my area because I got to do science experiments and I got to create all kinds of visual things for the kids to look at. So it was really easy to keep my students engaged because I did those two things. And of course, my auditory learners would listen. So my question to you is, what kind of learner are you? So just throw it into the chat, the type of learner that you are. The thing is that while you're doing that, I'm just going to say that you go out there online and look up learning styles, and you can find some things that talk about these three, and some that talk about a fourth one like reader, writer, and some that have like 18 or 20 different categories. And the way I learn, I like it a little bit more simplistic, so I'm sticking with these three. So now that you have recorded the type of learner that you think you might be, my next question is, do your children learn the same way you do? So if all the kids in your house are the same kind of learner as you are, put yes. If all the kids in your house are different than you, put no. And if some of your kids are like you and some of your kids aren't like you, put both. I'll give you a second to fill in those two answers. By the way, this is me nodding towards my kinesthetic learners, so you're doing something while we're talking here. And it's making you process this concept of learners because you are applying it to yourself and then doing something with it physically. Okay, the bottom line is we all have abilities in all three areas, but if you're going to do something, the task at hand is going to dictate which one comes up front and center. So take the simple act of trying to teach a child about books. The first thing that they cue into is their visual learner side, where they're looking at the pictures and how the colors are. And then their auditory side kicks in because they listen to you reading the words. And then as they get bigger, they want to handle the pages themselves. That's their kinesthetic side. So that makes us do everything in all directions. Now, this is modeling behavior. Elizabeth had mentioned this about modeling behavior. I'm just going to say as an aside, if you've got a behavior that you do that you don't want your kids to do, may I subtly suggest that you stop doing that behavior, because they are going to imitate everything that you do. Okay. Next, maximizing your learning styles for group projects. Most kids dread having a group project at school because they don't know how to function within it. If your child understands about learning styles, then they can apply that to the group project. In a group, if the kids can identify what they're strong at, then you can assign jobs based on what they're good at. So your visual learners will be the ones who will go and do the research. They will go look up the information and bring it back to the group. The auditory learners will be the people who will take that information and turn it into something that will be verbal, so that when you do your presentation, you'll have your speech, if you will. And then the kinesthetic learners are going to be taking that information and putting it into the poster or the trifold board or the PowerPoint. And so what you're doing is you're playing to everybody's strengths. So one of the things that I'm offering to you for joining us today is to have this inventory right at your fingertips. If you go to DeborahAnnDavis.com, Learning Styles Inventory with hyphens there, then you'll be able to access this document. And this is from the Georgia State Department of Education. I like it because they do just the three: auditory, kinesthetic, and visual learning styles. So it's more simplistic for me. But also when you get there, you will have some directions on how to use it. On my website, it has directions on how to use it. Now, and also all these links will be available at the end. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different learning styles, and then we're going to talk about how to help enhance those learning styles so they can do better in school or in life. And then we're going to talk about specific things that you can do for distance learning for those learning styles. And we're going to start with visual learners. And like I said, I'm predominantly a visual learner. Visual learners learn by seeing. They need to see people's body language, and they need to see the teacher's facial expressions. And you wouldn't think that that would matter, but that's how they learn. I find that I have difficulty understanding people when they talk through the mask, because somehow my mind processes words by watching the person's mouth when they speak. So be aware that that might be something going on with your visual learner. We visual learners like to sit in the front of the room. When I was younger, I always thought it's because I was short, but they like to be able to see everything directly. It matters to them not to have to sit around. So if you've got a visual learner in a classroom where they sit alphabetically and their last name begins with Z, then it's more difficult for them in a classroom to get the information and process it as efficiently. And visual learners are notorious note takers. I take notes on everything. That's how I process things. And when I go back, I read my notes over, and that helps me study. And visual learners love things that you can see. We love graphs, we love diagrams, we love pictures. We love to draw diagrams to make it so we'll understand it later. Anything that is illustrated, including textbooks, are great for visual learners. Auditory learners are slightly different. They have all the abilities that visual and kinesthetic learners have, just like visual learners do, but auditory learners learn through listening. But when I was in college, we were in big auditoriums, and the person was like a little ant down there at the front. And I had a hard time in those classes because I couldn't really see what was going on with the person. But auditory learners thrive in that setting. Auditory learners are the people who like to do discussions, and they are really good listeners. They interpret the sounds of the speech. When someone's talking, the visual learner interprets the gestures and the expressions on the face, but the auditory learners listen to the sound of the voice and the pitch and the speed and the emotion that they hear in it. And auditory learners are great with audiobooks. So if you've got a child who has a reading assignment, then like a book that they have to read for school, then get the audiobook version of it, and then have them read along as they're listening to it. They will internalize and retain the information way better. Another trick for audio learners is that have them read stuff out loud while you record it. Like if you've got an iPhone or tape recorder, and then they can listen to that again later, and that will be the way that they study. Kinesthetic learners make up the smallest percentage of our population. They are the people who like to do things. They like to manipulate and try it themselves and formulate things. And that helps them understand the content. They find it hard to sit still for long periods of time, which you can help them out by not giving them refined sugars or carbohydrates prior to their school day, because cereals and things like that make them more antsy and make them want to move around more, and makes it more difficult for them to stay the course in front of that computer. And what happens is, and I know this from my kinesthetic side, you focus for a certain amount of time, and then your mind starts to go to, how long do I have to sit here? How much more time is there? And you no longer hear the lesson. All you hear is in your head, how long is this going to last? And they love any kind of class that's hands-on, like this cooking class in this picture, and which made it great for science, because science classes have experiments and things like that. And kinesthetic learners love projects. Anything that they can do to create something so that you can look at it, they love that. Okay, this next section is on helping your students learn, your children learn. So we're going to start with the visual learners. If you want to have your child do something on their own, and they're a visual learner, then what you do is you demonstrate how to do it and you say, okay, now you do it. They feel more confident learning something that way than saying, okay, this is this thing, go ahead and try it. For me, inquiry-based science was very difficult as a child, where they say, just go and try it. I was not a just go and try it type of person. Show me how you do it, then I'll go do it, and then I'll embellish it and change it and experiment with it. But I never wanted to start it myself. Take advantage of educational TV shows and videos. They're out there by the thousands. And picture books are really great for visual learners. And of course, for all babies, that's for everything, but for every type of learner. But as they get older, even in high school, anything with graphics will make it easier for learners, visual learners, to retain information. And use flowcharts or collages. When I write a book, I write sticky notes all over the place and I lay them out on the floor, and then I move them around into an order that makes sense to me. And then I stick them on sheets of notebook paper to maintain that order. And then I've got my organization set up. So your job as a parent is to show your kids different ways to organize things, and they will pick the one that matches their learning style. Visual to-do lists are great for visual learners. And I know that this picture looks like it's for youngsters, but this is still a great idea for high school kids. And if they've got school tasks that they have to do, make lists of them, checklists that they can check off. And you want to have that, especially if they've got something that's due today and something that's due at the end of the week and something that's due at the end of the month. So these checklists will help them stay on target with all the things they have to take care of. And then, yes, visual learners love to color code. My lesson plan book had one color for each of my separate classes, so I could follow them over the course of flipping pages. Now, if you've got auditory learners, I'm going to pause here for a second to just do a little commercial. Auditory learners listen. They listen to everything. If you have auditory learners in your house, then they are listening to everything that's going on. That means that when you're anxious about something that you're watching on the news, they'll hear snippets of it, but they'll hear your reaction to it. And the visual learners will look at the expression. When you're watching something that's political or something having to do with the pandemic, and you're going, or you're worried or whatever, the visual learners are walking away from that. And your children are privately being frightened and scared. So their anxiety level is going up. So my recommendation is that you broach the subject with them. You say to them, so what do you know about the way you're learning at home right now? Why we're learning at home? What do you know about the virus? What do you know about what's the attack on the Capitol? So you can ask them and they will bring up the information for you. And the other thing is your kids are getting information from listening and watching you, but they're also getting it from their friends. And the friends may not have an entirely 100% accurate version of it. So if your kids are having higher anxiety than normal, they may be worried about whether they're safe or whether you're safe or whether their grandparents are safe. So have the conversation with them. Okay, so if you've got auditory learners, find text-to-talk software. Most textbooks have online versions of them. And if you got text-to-talk software, the computer will read the book to them and while they read along on the screen, and they will internalize the information better. And they love to listen to stories and to tell their own stories. So those stories can be things that are like history based to match the subjects in their school, or they could be biographies, but they will listen to anything having to do with learning if you give them something in story form. Rhymes and songs. When my daughter was little, her school decided that they should be learning Japanese. So she learned the months and the days of the week and the numbers in Japanese all through songs. And to this day, she can still sing those songs. And there are tons of resources out there, like radio programs and TED Talks. All you got to do is put in the subject that your child is learning at school and look for it, do an internet search, and you'll find plenty of things that they can listen to on that topic that will enhance their learning, and it'll make it more interesting for them. Also, when your child does something outside their wheelhouse, so if they have to build a project or they have to write a written report, then have them report back to you about what it was that they did, what they learned, what they understood, and then that way they will process it better. That goes the same for reading instructions. You could do it one of two ways. Either you read the instructions out loud and then the two of you discuss them, or they read them out loud and then the two of you discuss them. And last but not least, auditory learners love discussion groups. They love to sit in kibitz with other people on topics. And if you can arrange that to happen with other children in their class online, then you will be aiding your auditory learner. Now, for the kinesthetic learners, there are so many things out there that you can do to help your kinesthetic learners. Any kind of puzzle or table game or anything where they have to manipulate stuff will help them learn things. And you can find ways for them to act out books and plays that they're supposed to read for school. That will help their retention. And anything that you want to do to enforce things. For example, like in science classes, we always had to do the science safety rules before, like the first week of school, and they had to sign off on them. Well, for a kinesthetic learner, acting those out or singing a song that goes along with them will help them learn that. Creating movement games that match what they're doing. You can use hopscotch for young learners for math problems, or when you throw a dice and they have to add it up and jump on the number. For kids who are doing multiple choice problems, you can put an A, B, C, D on there and you read the question in the choices and they have to jump on the choice. Science experiments go without saying, but if your science class is not set up to do science experiments because you're teaching at home, go online and find science experiments for whatever particular topic you're looking at. And there will be simple things, simple experiments and demonstrations that they can do. And everybody I know is notoriously bad at investigating their own neighborhood. So I suggest that you find things that are right around where you live and take a family field trip to something that is related to the subjects your students are learning. Okay, now for the moment you've all been waiting for, distance learning. So your child is home, and I would like to say that if your child is home or your child has just returned to school, or the child was at school and they have just returned home, be aware that our new normal is change and that whatever's going on right now may change again. So your message to your students should be, you know what, things might change again, but don't worry, we got this. If this is something I don't know how to help you with, I will find someone who does. You don't have to worry. All you have to do is be a kid and learn your lessons. So don't worry, I got this, you are good. Just keep reiterating that message to them. Now, for distance learners, if the person's up close like I am and they're looking in the camera and you can see the expression on their face, they're okay. But if they're further back and you can see their whole body, then visual learners will have difficulties. It'll be like a talking head to them. It won't help. But visual aids will make a huge difference for them on the computer. And your visual learners need to take notes and then reread their notes. They will adore any kind of handouts and worksheets. So if your teacher is not providing handouts and worksheets on a particular subject, go online and find free handouts and worksheets on that subject, printable handouts and worksheets. And you'll find that your visual learners love to diagram things and they love to work in workbooks. And when they like flow charts, they like pictures, they like to be able to work with those kinds of images that they process information in their head. Auditory learners, if you've got kids who like to listen, you're actually pretty good with the lectures coming in from school, because they will listen to that and they'll process it just fine. I also suggest that you record the classes, get permission, but record the classes so that they can listen to them again later. That's the way that they'll study. Yes, you can get them to take notes, but the auditory process is a stronger one for them. Get books on tape, and when they do reports, have them tape themselves reading the report, and then they'll see things that they want to change or fix. Also, there's a lot of resources out there for people who are visually impaired. So if you can tap into their library, you'll have tons of things that have been prepared for them for school. When they have worksheets, then read the worksheet aloud, because they're not big on just messing with things that they have to write with, but read the worksheet aloud to them and then have them write the answers, or have them read the worksheet aloud and then have them write the answers. I hope that was helpful for you. And now for the kinesthetic learner. There is so much information out there for kinesthetic learners. They have a hard time because they have to sit behind the computer for a period of time. So if you can, again, get permission to record their lesson so they can do the class in shorter spurts, then you build in breaks. So they work for 15 minutes and then they go run up and down the stairs for 15 minutes, and they work for another for 5 minutes. They work for another 15 minutes and then they go do push-ups and pull-ups for 5 minutes, and then they come back. They will be refreshed, they will be recharged and rebooted, and they'll be ready to take on the lesson again. So depending on their age will determine how long you should give them before they start getting restless. So you know your kids, you know what it is that they start getting antsy. So use that period of time and change it as it's appropriate. For younger kids, they may need to get up every 15 minutes. For older kids, they need to get up, every half hour, every 45 minutes. Another thing you can do is, if you've got a laptop that you can move to a kitchen counter, have them take their notes standing up. Have them listen to the lecture standing up. That way, the top part of their body can be engaged in the process, and the bottom part of the body can be fidgeting and moving around and easing their need to move. If you've got kinesthetic learners, you may find that they doodle in the margins. That is not a sign that they are not paying attention. That is a way that they channel their need to move into something that allows them to tune into what they're hearing or watching on the screen. And the other thing, if you can give them what I call interactive snacks, like peanuts or pistachios that you have to crack open while you eat them, they will crack those open and they will listen and process the material while they are doing that. And again, don't reinvent the wheel. I went online and I looked up activities for kinesthetic learners. And this was the first thing that came up. So you can go to this website if you want to, or you could just research these things online. Whatever your child's learning strength is, these are things that you can do to help them show that they understand the material and help them process the material so that they will retain it. And the other thing is, if you've got a visual learner or an audio learner, using these kinds of activities will help them be stronger in the kinesthetic area. So use this idea to process and get information for your kids to process when they're trying to learn things in different areas, because your teachers are going to have different teaching styles. So your kids are going to need to be able to step up for different styles. And also, this is not just for kids, because I'd like to say that if you absolutely love what you do for work, then most likely you have a good environment, but you have a job that is geared towards your strengths. In school, we are required to do all strengths, but when you go out into the work world, you head for the strength that is your preference. If you're in a job that you don't care for, then most likely you are in a job that is requiring a strength that you don't have. You're not playing to your personal strengths. Like for me personally, I hate cooking, hate it, don't like to do it, don't like to plan it, don't like to think about it, don't like to clean up after it. I do like to eat. So if I had to have a job as a cook, I would be unhappy. I could be good at it, but it wouldn't be what I want to do. So Be aware of your particular learning style and know that you need to use the part, if you've got your kids learning at home, you need to use the part that is in keeping with your learning style as you're working with your kids. That will make for the best environment for both of you. Now, this is a unique way to use the learning style inventory that I'm about to share with you. Also, I made this little video. I'm very proud of it. I did it on software, free software called Doodly. And this is a very short video. It's the very first one I ever made. So you're about to debut it. Let's see here, play. Okay, so if you want to go take the learning style inventory and find out what your learning style is, that's great. But have your child do it too. And then when you're done, don't share the information with each other. Instead, what you do is take it again. This time you take it pretending that you're your daughter, and your daughter takes it pretending that she's you. And then after you're done with that, you can go ahead and share your information. Because what you'll find, I did a retreat with moms and daughters a few years ago, and I gave them a quiz like this to take, and the mothers figured out who the daughters were right away. But the daughters all gave the mom their version. So if the daughter was a kinesthetic learner, then she thought the mother was a kinesthetic learner. And that causes a lot of conflict. And when you have a relationship where the mothers and the daughters get along, most likely they have the same styles. And when they clash a lot, it's because in the little child's world, they think, well, my mom's going to react this way. So when I say this, so when I say, I'm going to go over to my friend's house, and my mom says, no, you can't do that. There's a pandemic going on, blah, 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 blah. The kid's blindsided because they thought the mother would react the way the child would react. So it is a great way for you to understand what's going on with your child. And if you share with them that this is one of the reasons why things are confusing, and this is mommy's style, and this is your style, let's figure out how to bridge that gap. Your child will feel more secure. And if you go to, again, DeborahAnnDavis.com, Learning Styles Inventory, these directions that I just said with the little video are on there. And by the way, if you like the video, just put a little note in the chat. So I'll see that when I'm all done with this little presentation, because I actually can't see the chat right now. Okay. And last but not least, I have no idea what the time is, so I hope I'm on time here. Everything I just covered here is one of the chapters in my book, How to Keep Your Daughter from Slamming the Door. You can get it everywhere, basically. But I will say that if you go to my website, DeborahAnnDavis.com, there's another book there that you can get for free called How to Get Your Happy On. And yes, I'm a science geek. And so at the end of it, there's a little experiment that you can do with your family about the effects of media and music on your mood. But that book is for free if you get it through my website. I mean, you could buy it on Amazon, but if you go to the website, you can get it for free. And if you are interested, you can sign up for my newsletter at, it's called Merry Meddling. It's monthly, and just send me an email at info@DeborahAnnDavis.com, and I will sign you up for the newsletter. So I hope that this was helpful, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Yeah, we had a couple of folks, Julia in particular, she said she always thought she was visual. I happen to know her. She's one of my neighbors and a friend of mine, and she's an amazing artist. And she's like, I always thought I was visual, but it turns out she's acknowledging that maybe she's more kinesthetic. She says she never took notes. She always drew. That's how she took her notes. And I'm like, yeah, like artists, musicians, actors, athletes, we use our bodies. It's what we do.
We are combos, absolutely.
So, and then she said that she acknowledges, she recognized why she struggled in school, and she can see both of her stepkid styles. And Karen said she just had an aha moment about her own daughter.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I mean, things are going to be very different now.
Hopefully.
Yep.
Any other questions? And Julia just said, she's like, between the first two of you, I'm experiencing knowledge overload.
That's why you want to go back and look at this.
Yep.
Exactly. Or just think to yourself, take a moment, like take a deep breath. Okay, if there's one thought from each, just one that I'm going to take away,
Mhm.
then you only have two things to remember.
Great.
That's right. If you pick one thing that you're going to do today or tomorrow, just one, and then you mess with that for a while, and then you say, okay, I'm going to go back and check out that video, and I'm going to pick another thing and do it. Because it's all about baby steps. It's not about a major overhaul in your life. Plus, if you try to overhaul everything, you'll freak out your kids.
Hey,
Yeah.
Deborah, I have one question.
Yes.
So I love that you said that if you're happy in your job, you're probably doing a job that matches your learning style. And I know that from a professional point of view, the advice is work in your genius, work on bringing your genius even higher, go get other people, right? Go hire out, outsource the stuff that you're not good at, the learning styles that you're not good at. But as you pointed out, in school, we are expecting our kids to use all the learning styles at once. And often I find parents are looking at where is their child weak, and they're putting a lot of effort into, trying to shore up that learning style. Which in some, I mean, if you've got a fifth grader, you've got a lot more years of school where there are going to be teachers who are predominantly teaching in a learning style that might not be your child's. That argument says maybe it's a good idea to help shore up this thing. But if I'm looking really long term and I'm thinking, this child is a great kinesthetic learner. This child really needs to develop those kinesthetic ways of doing things. I'm just curious what your thought is about like how much remediation energy to put in.
Well, this is my big deal. This is a very important thing to me as a teacher, watching my kids struggle. When the kids, if your kid is happy with their school situation when they're little, you say to them, and you want to find out, you say to them, does your teacher love you? And the kids who are feeling confident in school will say, yes, my teacher loves me. And the ones who are struggling or having some kind of difficulty will say, no, my teacher doesn't love me. That is a big flag for you that something's not going on. Something is going on that needs to be corrected or addressed. Now, my guess is that the teacher is asking the child to do things that the child's not good at and therefore needs to be shored up. So I'm saying that first, so it's a long way around the answer. Between now and when the kid lands their ideal job, the school system and their education is all they've got for validating whether or not they're on target, doing good, right? So if we can't get them to feel validated and feel good about themselves, they're not going to get that opportunity for that job. So for me, I am not artsy at all. When I used to draw stick figures, like I'd be doing the oxygen cycle or with a chicken and an egg, and I draw things up there with stick figures, and my kids would go, what is that? And I go, oh, you little city kids, you don't know a chicken? This is a chicken, I mean, I have no art skills whatsoever. So when I was in a setting where I had like an art class, I always felt like the idiot. That's what kids do. When they're in a setting that doesn't match what their strength is, they feel like an idiot. And the two things that you can do to help them is to say, somewhere's in you, you have all of this and we're going to fix it. And the second thing you can do is to say the word yet. You haven't learned how to do that yet, but you will learn how to do it. Look at all the things that you can do. Did you know how to do those when you were 5? No. So you don't know how to do this now, but we're going to get you there. So meanwhile, your teacher needs to know that you know this material. So we're going to use this way to do it so you can show them that you know the material. But now we are going to practice your reading skills because I'm going to get you this audiobook and you're going to read along while you're listening to the words. And you know what I'd like you to do? Is I'd like you to imitate the guy's voice while you're reading along, or imitate that lady's voice while you're reading along, or pretend you're like Pinocchio's voice while you're reading along. So convey to them that, yeah, you flunked the test. So what does that mean? Test is just a measurement of what you know right this minute. So you don't know how to do that yet, which this is Clarissa's strength. That she's going to talk about this stuff. But so yes, in terms of keeping them balanced in all things, yes, we do need to do that for them, because when they get the teacher who is just kinesthetic and their audio, and the teacher's going, here, go try this. And they're like, well, I don't know what to do. So we need to teach them how to approach things that are outside their wheelhouse. And more importantly, to not be afraid of the things they don't know how to do yet. And Elizabeth, you were talking about this when you were saying each year they learn another set of skills and more things that they have in their arsenal that they can use.
Awesome. So Catherine actually just brought up an interesting perspective. So again, I actually know Catherine personally as well. Catherine, I'm super glad that you're here, both as a parent and as a fellow coach and mentor and educator. She works with a lot of kids in the college admissions process, but she also homeschooled 6 kids.
Nice.
So for any of you who are in the homeschooling space or who are going, how do I navigate having all of my children in the same space? Catherine is a good resource on that. But she said one of her concerns with Common Core, Deborah, is the emphasis on group work, or with the emphasis on group work, is that some of the stronger kids will get lower grades because they just don't do the social aspect as well. Like maybe that auditory, like interactive side of things. Or maybe like they don't do the kinesthetic, like create the poster assignments. What are your thoughts? And I am going to say, let's just be conscious of time and response, but what are your thoughts about demanding all students do things in every style?
Say you have a small group, and I don't know about that last sentence, all students do everything in all styles. They need to dabble in all styles. That's what I'm saying. They need to dabble in it. So when they are in a group project, you go with everybody doing what they're strong at with. And your visual learner will watch that kinesthetic learner putting stuff together and spacing things out properly. And they'll go, oh, so when they have to do it, they will have acquired that skill. And your auditory learner will also be watching the instructions when they're saying, do this and move this here and do that there. And they'll understand when the visual learner comes back with the research and says, I got this at such and such a thing. I looked up these things and I tried this, and they'll say, oh, that's what I'll do when I have to do that. So it's not that every person has to be an expert at stuff, but you can say to a visual learner, can you help me with the poster? You can say to an auditory learner, would you go to this place and look up and bring back this information? So it's not that they can't do it, but let's face it, when everybody's goal is the grade and not the learning, then you want to play to your strengths. But don't think for a second that they're not watching what each other's doing. I'm not sure I actually answered that question, because I was thrown a little bit by the phrasing of the last sentence.
Catherine, you want to rephrase it? Or do we want to keep that for the end for Q&A so that we can stay mostly on time? Or what are your thoughts?
One of the things I've seen with Common Core is they are asking kids to do things in the various modalities. They want to see them master all of these different, and there's 2 aspects of it. Some that just are really weak in some areas. So now that's suddenly dropping that super high grade. Which I'm mostly thinking of the competitive kids or the super gifted kids that are asynchronous developed, because they're maybe a couple grades ahead academically in that subject, and they might be a grade or 2 behind socially, and they're out of step with their peers anyway. And so those group projects tend to really hit their grades, where before they could just kind of fly through on the academic piece, but this having to do the group thing or the demonstrative thing, those seem to be the 2 biggest changes that Common Core made in the presentation of your skills requirements for students, and how to try to help them navigate that better. Because in homeschooling, you can segregate the social from the academic, but when you're in the regular school system, you can't as well.
The teachers need to be trained in that process, because the reality is they're going to be required to do that when they get into a job. So they need those school skills. That's one of the things that's one of the reasons Common Core has gone in that direction, I believe. But the thing is that we don't teach them the skills when they go do group work. We just say, all right, everybody in the first part of the alphabet, you're in a group, and everybody in the second part of the, see, if the teacher said, all right, all my visual learners over here, all my kinesthetic learners over here, all my audio learners over here, and 1, 2, 3, you're in a group, 1, 2, 3, you're in a group, 1, 2, 3, you're in a group. And then they would end up, and then you say to them, this is how you work with people in your group. Because we don't teach them that. We just say, you have at it. So, yeah.
The other thing that I would say is that in a given teacher's classroom, a given kind of student is going to do better. And that's always been true.
Yes.
It will probably always continue to be true. And that the disadvantage that perhaps like highly visual but not socially adept students used to have an advantage, right? If they're in a very visual, very worksheet, very paper kind of classroom, they go read the textbook and they can take the test and they're fine. And it was the social kid who needed to, or the kinesthetic kid who needed to do things as projects and to work things out in order to do the learning, who was struggling and whose grade wasn't as good. And now maybe that kid is getting a chance to come up and this kid is falling a little because it's not the strength. So I think we need to trust that it's going to come out in the wash over the long run. And that, as Deborah said, we need different skills, right? And I know that in terms of like test prep, Clarissa will reassure us that like there are some kids who are going to do better on those tests because those tests match their learning styles. And so when we've given the kinesthetic learners or the social learners opportunities in class to shine through other ways, then that's going to help to compensate for the fact that they are not going to do as well on those standardized SAT tests.
How are we doing
Right.
on time, Clarissa?
We should be mindful of time because we don't want to get Clarissa. So
So we're going to move. My only wrapping thought is, yes, some of this is relevant to what's going on in a traditional classroom. Obviously, our norm now is change. And so acknowledging, if your kid is more the kinesthetic learner and maybe they don't have as many opportunities, how can we supplement that at home? And so that's actually gonna be part of what I talk about. So with that, let's do a quick 3-minute potty break, or as they say, bio break. And then we'll come back and talk about some mindset. And I'm thrilled that there's a lot of consistencies with the things that we're all passionate about. So hopefully I can offer a little bit different spin on some of the things we've heard. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back shortly.